So welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to our lecture series called Daily News in Shorts. In this lecture series, we cover a particular day's current affairs in a short span of time within 30 minutes. Now the thing is that just watching this lecture would be job half done, because just after watching it, you need to revise it as well. Revision is very important. Otherwise, you'll quickly forget these current affairs. Now you can revise these current affairs from the notes provided by us, and these notes shall be shared on our Telegram channel. The link to our Telegram channel is provided in the comment section just below this video. Okay then, without further delay, let's straight away jump into the lecture. Let's start with today's lecture, Daily Current Affairs, 22nd July, Tuesday. And here is the list of topics that we shall cover in today's lecture. Today we'll be covering these 5 topics because these were the 5 topics of significance as far as Civil Services Examination is concerned. Okay, number 1 topic is Vice President's resignation. Well, many people are surprised regarding the untimely or premature resignation of Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar. So we'll talk about the constitutional provisions as to what happens when the Vice President of India resigns. Okay, so we'll only focus on the constitutional provisions because questions can be asked from that only. Questions won't be asked from the politics of that matter. Okay, then as you all know, the most reliable yet the most infamous fighter jets of India called MiG-21. The Indian Air Force is ready to phase them out and replace them with LCA Tejas. So we'll talk about MiG-21, which India used in various wars it fought against Pakistan. Okay, and why was it infamous? Why was it controversial? We'll talk about the entire history of MiG-21. Okay, because these are being phased out. From 1963, this is the first time that we won't have any MiG-21s. So, well, we'll talk about them. Then, well, 2 Indians were killed and 1 abducted in Niger. So, this brings into the news Niger, the country which is currently going through big phase of political instability. So, we'll talk about Niger, okay, its geographical location and its relationship with India. Then, as you all know, that government of India is very serious about sports. And you must have heard about this, that we can host the Olympics in 2036. Therefore, we need a proper sports policy. That is why government has launched National Sports Policy 2025. We'll talk about this and the importance of sports. And in the end, we'll talk about a project, a joint space project between NASA and ISRO, which is known as NISAR Project. Okay? So these are the 5 topics that we shall zero in our attention on. So let's start discussing them one by one, starting with topic number 1, and that is Vice President's resignation. Now you see, the Vice President of India is elected for a term of 5 years. The current Vice President of India was Mr. Jagdeep Dhankar. Now he has resigned prematurely. Clear? The thing is, his tenure was still not over. 2 years were still pending. But he resigned, citing health reasons. Now, this has basically created a market for speculations. Okay, everyone is speculating. Political speculations are rife. Okay, everyone is believing in one conspiracy theory or the other. So we won't focus on those conspiracy theories. What we'll focus on is the office of Vice President. Okay, and what happens when Vice President of India resigns. Okay, now remember, this is the only third occasion, or this is the third occasion when Vice President of India has resigned prematurely. Okay, before Mr. Jagdeep Dhankar, only 2 Vice Presidents of India resigned, V.V. Giri and R. Venkataraman. Okay, these were the 2 Vice Presidents who resigned prematurely, but they resigned because they wanted to fight for the elections of President. This is the first time that a Vice President is resigning citing health reasons. Okay, that is why political speculations are rife. Nonetheless, we'll focus on how Vice President of India is elected and what happens if he resigns early. Clear? So, Vice President's resignation. So, how is he elected? So, remember, well, Vice President of India's election, Vice President of India is elected by an electoral college. Okay, so members of this electoral college actually vote for Vice President of India. Okay, who are the members of this electoral college? All members of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Now you know that both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha had elected members, and especially in Rajya Sabha there are some members who are nominated as well. Okay, so both elected and nominated members of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha would be part of this electoral college. This is different from the elections of president, because in case of president, only elected members of Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha and elected members of state legislative assemblies would take part in the elections, would be members of electoral college. But in case of vice president, all members, elected or nominated, of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, they take part. The elections take place in Parliament House in New Delhi, and the system of elections is proportional representation by means of single transferable vote. We know about this, okay? Even president's elections take place through this system. Then, the elections are conducted by Election Commission of India, okay? And these elections are conducted as per President's and Vice Presidential Elections Act 1952. Clear? Now, what are the qualifications for a person who wants to stand for the elections of Vice President? Well, he should be a citizen of India, 35 years old or more than that, okay? And he should be qualified to be a member of Rajya Sabha. Clear? And one more thing, he should not hold any office of profit under central government or state government. By the way, the office of president, governor or a minister won't be considered an office of profit. That means any other person holding any office under government of India won't be eligible for these elections except president, vice president, president, governor and any minister. So any minister can stand for the elections of vice president. Yes? So this is the way, or these are the provisions that you should remember about Vice President of India when it comes to his or her elections. Now the question is, what happens when the Vice President resigns? So you should know this, that the tenure of Vice President of India, okay, is 5 years. Clear? And what is the job of a Vice President? Well, if the President's office is vacant or he is unable to perform his duties, his duties due to health or any other reasons, then Vice President steps up and acts as President. So that is the duty of Vice President. Basically, Vice President is President in reserves. Okay? Whenever President cannot perform his functions, Vice President does. But when President is performing their functions properly, the Vice President shall act as Chairman of Rajya Sabha. Right? Now the procedure to remove Vice President of India is same as removal of Speaker. We won't get into that. But this office can lie vacant if Vice President of India resigns by submitting their resignation to the President. That's what Jagdeep Dhankar ji did. So what happens when Vice President of India resigns? So when President of India resigns, well, the thing is, our constitution is very clear that if the President of India resigns, you have to conduct elections for the new president within 6 months. Until the time new president is elected, Vice President shall perform the role of the President. Right? But no such provision is available for Vice President. So if the office of Vice President lies vacant, the Constitution says that conduct elections as soon as possible. They don't give a deadline of 6 months. Okay? They say conduct elections as soon as possible. So no deadline of 6 months. Second is, when Vice President of India resigns, there is no provision for acting Vice President, as is the case in President. Okay, when President resigns, Vice President acts as President. But that is not the case with Vice President. So the office shall lie vacant until new Vice President is elected. Okay, so there is no deadline for elections. Elections will be conducted by Election Commission of India as per President and Vice Presidential Elections Act 1952. And, well, 2 years were remaining before the end of tenure of Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar, right? So now when the new elections would take place and a new VP would come to power, will he serve for the remainder 2 years or he will have a full 5-year term? The answer is, the new Vice President will have a full 5-year term. So remember this part, because they can basically fool you in any MCQ and you might mark the wrong answer. So make sure you remember all these facts. All right, and that would be all. That's about it. And now let's talk about second news item, which is a little sentimental news item also, especially for the Indian Air Force, and that is phasing out of MiG-21. Now, MiG-21 was the workhorse of Indian Air Force. MiG-21 were inducted from Russia into Indian Air Force in 1963. And since then, MiG-21 has been the most reliable fighter jet. I shouldn't say the most reliable, but MiG-21 was used extensively in all the wars that India has fought so far. 1965 war, 71 war, 99 Kargil war, we have used MiG-21s. MiG-21s have been part of Indian Air Force since 1963. So, well, for the older generation of Indian Air Force pilots or Indian Air Force, MiG-21 carries a sentimental value, right? But MiG-21 is also infamous. Why? Because so many accidents have occurred because of MiG-21, okay? Since the induction of MiG-21 in 1963, so far, in all these 60 years, around about 60 years, 500 accidents have taken place. 500, okay? Which has killed around 170 pilots. Many accidents have taken place. And these accidents became so popular in the media that some people termed this fighter jet as a flying coffin. It's like a coffin flying in the air because it is prone to accidents, right? Now, this is basically MiG-21 is an older aircraft. Therefore, for long, Indian Air Force has been trying to replace it, okay, to phase it out. But Indian Air Force was waiting to phase it out before, until it gets a new replacement. So the reason, despite so many accidents, MiG-21 was still being used by the Indian Air Force was because Indian Air Force did not have its replacement available. But now with the availability of LCA Tejas, Indian Air Force has announced that it would phase out completely MiG-21 for good. Okay, so that is why it would be an end of an era. MiG-21 would be finally phased out and completely replaced by LCA Tejas, India's indigenously manufactured, designed fighter jet. Okay, so that is the story of MiG-21. So let's talk a few facts about MiG-21. Okay, in brief, phase out of MiG-21. All right, now about MiG-21, well, the thing is, remember this part, it is a single engine. LCA Tejas is twin engine. Okay, so it is single engine, single seater. Two people cannot sit inside. Single seater, multi-role aircraft. Now, what do you mean by multi-role? Well, it can be used for ground attack, okay, attacking ground installations. It can be used for dogfights as well, between fighter jets, and many other roles can be performed by this. So it is a multi-role fighter jet, okay. It was inducted from Russia in 1963, and since then, since 1963, over 700 MiG-21s have been inducted. Many of them were destroyed because of accidents, but till in these 60 years, 700 have been inducted, okay, and different variants of them have been inducted. Clear? The latest variant of MiG-21 currently being used by Indian Air Force is MiG-21 Bison, okay. So there are many variants of MiG-21. The latest, the most upgraded version of MiG-21 is MiG-21 Bison. Currently, we have 3 squadrons, and in one squadron, you have around 16 to 18 fighter jets. Okay, so currently we have 3 operational squadrons of MiG-21 Bison. Clear? Plus, the good thing about MiG-21 is that it has been used exhaustively by the Indian Air Force in multiple wars that India has fought so far. In many operations, MiG-21 were used. But MiG-21s do not have a good reputation among India's population, especially in the media, because many stories have come out in the media talking about technical failures while flying, okay, technical failures in MiG-21, and so many deaths of India's fighter pilots have been covered by the media. Well, there was a movie, Bollywood movie made on this, okay, Rang De Basanti. It was a very famous movie. It also talked about this issue, okay, the accidents. Now, because there were so many accidents, like I mentioned before, that there were so many accidents, around 500 accidents have occurred which have taken the lives of around 170 pilots. MiG-21 was pejoratively termed as the flying coffin. Okay? But if you ask some senior Indian Air Force pilots and some of the officials who have now retired, they say that MiG-21 is not that unreliable. Okay? MiG-21 has been used so extensively that these accidents are bound to happen. Nonetheless, these accidents happen. Okay? Maybe sometimes because of technical failure. Okay? Sometimes because of weather. Sometimes because of negligence of pilots. But these accidents have happened. And that is why the reputation of MiG-21s is not that great. Therefore, for quite some time, okay, Indian Air Force was searching, or Indian Air Force was looking to phase them out completely. Because number one reason is that, well, they are older aircrafts, they are older fighter jets. As far as today is concerned, we are currently living in 2025, okay? In this day and age, there are some very advanced fighter jets. We have to be prepared. We have to be capable enough to inflict damage on enemy air forces. Therefore, we need upgraded, best possible fighter jets. That is why Indian Air Force was looking to phase these MiG-21s out completely and replace them with new generation fighter jets. The problem is that, well, Indian Air Force couldn't do that. Despite so many accidents, we were still using MiG-21s as late as 2025. We are currently also using MiG-21s. Despite having such a poor reputation, MiG-21s were not phased out for so many years. Now, what is the reason behind that? Okay. Now, the reason is, well, as per Indian Air Force, okay, as per Indian Air Force, well, for our operational capability, for our military readiness, okay, Indian Air Force says that we need 42 squadrons of fighter jets. And I've told before, okay, one squadron is equal to 16 to 18 fighter jets, okay. The thing is, they say that India faces a situation like two-front war, okay. It can happen that in future, both China and Pakistan attack India. So India has this situation. India can, in future, face a situation like this. India can be fighting a two-front war. For a two-front war, well, Indian Air Force requires 42 squadrons. Okay, so we need at least 42 squadrons of fighter jets to be military ready for any conflict in future. Do you know what is the current strength of India's fighter jets? Currently, we only have 30 squadrons. We are 12 squadrons short. Okay. Now, Indian Air Force has been complaining for quite some time that we need LCA Tejas as soon as possible. Plus, we need the other foreign-made fighter jets as well. Okay. But LCA Tejas was not being delivered to Indian Air Force in a timely fashion. There were some delays. That is why currently we are left with 30 squadrons. And many Indian Air Force chiefs have warned that this is not a good situation. This is dangerously low levels of fighter jets squadrons we have. Okay. Now, in such a situation, when LCA Tejas is not ready, okay, and among these 30 squadrons, we have 3 squadrons of MiG-21. Do you think Indian Air Force is prepared to phase these 3 squadrons out? Okay. Do you think Indian Air Force would take the risk of completely phasing out MiG-21 and then they would be left with only 27 squadrons, which are dangerously low levels of squadrons, fighter jet squadrons that India should have. Instead of 42, we'll be having 27. So Indian Air Force couldn't risk that. That is why they decided to keep up with these MiG-21s until and unless this LCA Tejas was available in a flyby condition. And now that the news has come out that LCA Tejas is available, so MiG-21s would be completely replaced by LCA Tejas and we will retire these MiG-21s once and for all. That is the whole news. Alright? Make sense? Okay. So that's about it. That's all you need to know as far as MiG-21s are concerned. Now let's quickly shift our focus to third news item of the day, and that is conflict in Niger. Now listen to me carefully. Okay, Niger is a country bordering Nigeria, of course. Okay, Niger is a Western African country, so it lies in Western Africa, and it lies in this region called the Sahel region. Okay, you can say just below Sahara Desert, there is a region, geographical region called the Sahel region. Okay, Niger lies in that region. Now, this region is prone to, well, political instability. All the neighboring countries of Niger, which lie in this Sahel region, they face political instability, they face terrorism, Islamist terrorism, okay? They face law and order problems, they face military coups, quite frequent military coups, okay? So all these countries in the Niger region, most of these countries face political instability and military coups and terrorism. Plus there is this another problem of climate change, increasing desertification, right? So in this region which is full of turmoil, there is one country called Niger. And in Niger also, Niger got independence in 1960. Since then, there have been a series of military coups. Sometimes there is a democratically elected government, then military coup. And that's what happened recently also. There was a democratically elected president in 2021, but he was replaced by a military coup in 2023. Okay, so this is a very unstable region. Plus there is pressure from Islamist terror groups also. So very troubled region. In this troubled region, recently, well, 2 Indians who were working there, they were killed, and one of them has been abducted and a ransom is being demanded. Okay, now that man who has been abducted is from Jammu and Kashmir. So Jammu and Kashmir CM has raised this matter to the central government. Central government of India has raised this matter to the Indian embassy to find out how can we save this Indian. So it has become a political matter. Okay, and Niger is at the center of it. Now for us civil services aspirants, what is important? First of all, the important thing to know is the geographical location of Niger, because map-based questions are asked in UPSC prelims. So we need to be aware of the geographical location of Niger. Clear? And then you need to know some facts about Niger. Okay, what kind of problems it is facing, okay, what kind of relationship it shares with India, all these things. Only this kind of information you should be aware of. That's about it, and nothing more as far as this topic is concerned. So we'll only focus on the important points from this news item. So pay attention to me, okay? So conflict in Niger. So first of all, let's talk about this country called Niger. So as you can see on this map, this is the region, okay? So this region is the Western African region. So Niger lies in West Africa, okay? Now the reason why Niger is called Niger, because of a river that flows, which is called Niger River. So Niger is basically the name of the river on whose name the country is named. Okay, so this is Niger. The capital city of Niger is Niamey. Okay, and as you can see, it is bordered by many countries. Clear? Algeria in the north. Algeria lies in Sahara region. Okay, Libya, Chad, Nigeria, Benin, Burkina Faso, Mali. So there are many countries. Remember the names of these countries, okay? Plus this region, as you can see over here, which contains countries like Mali, Niger, Chad, Nigeria, Benin, Burkina Faso. All these countries lie in the Sahel region of Africa. It is a geographical region which lies just below the Sahara Desert. So Algeria, Libya lie in Sahara Desert. Below Sahara Desert is the Sahel region. Now this is a politically troubled region. Politically troubled, terrorism-wise troubled, climate change-wise troubled, and Niger is no different. Clear? Now, if we talk about Niger's current situation, so the thing is that, well, Nigeria, first of all, let's talk about the history of Nigeria. So, not Nigeria, Niger. So, Niger was under French colonial rule. Until 1960. So Niger gained independence in 1960. Now, the thing is that because it was under French colonial rule, that is why the official language of Niger was French. Like the official language in India is English because we were under British colonial rule. Similarly, Niger was under French colonial rule and its official language was French. But this official language status given to French stayed only till 2025. Okay, in 2025 they changed this official language status from French, and today the official language of Niger is Hausa, which is one of their local languages. Okay, for example, if India changes this, if India says tomorrow that the official language is not English, it's Hindi or Tamil or Telugu or any other Indian language, that's what Niger has done. Now, it has faced many problems. Niger has faced many problems. There has been political instability since 1960. Okay? And a series of military coups. Now, the latest military coup happened in 2023. Now, what kind of problems Niger faces? Okay? So let's talk about the problems briefly. So Niger faces following problems. First of all, climate change and increased desertification, because of which many farmers have lost their livelihoods and there is poverty, food insecurity and all that. So climate change is one problem. Then poverty is a huge problem. Then rise of Islamist terrorism is a huge problem. Okay, by the way, you should know this about Niger. More than 90% of Niger's population is Muslim. But Niger's constitution is secular. It guarantees freedom of religion. Clear? You should know this about Niger. Islamist terrorism and, well, political instability. These are the problems it faces. Right? Now, as far as India-Niger situation is concerned, okay, India-Niger relationship is concerned, well, this relationship was minimal, okay. When we talk about trade, until recently, the trade between the two countries was 93 million only. That is very low, like very low. But in recent years, things have improved and India-Niger trade has increased dramatically. It reached to more than $200 million, okay. Now, India buys a lot of natural plant-based products from Niger, okay, like gum arabic, which is used in many food products, okay, and many other leaves, roots, which have medicinal properties are bought from Niger. Clear? Now, currently in Niger, there are only 150 Indians. So, in Niger, there are 150 Indians who work there. Clear? That's it. Out of these 150 Indians, 2 have been killed, 1 has been abducted. So that is the current situation. The relationship is not that strong between Niger and India. Nonetheless, it is growing. That's about it. That's all you need to know as far as Niger is concerned. And now let's quickly shift our focus to national sports policy. Okay. Now the thing is that India wants to host the Olympics in 2026. Okay. And India has bid for that. But India is also very ambitious as far as the performance of its sportsmen is concerned. Okay, India wants to increase its medals tally in the future Olympic Games. Okay, India wants to improve the state of sportsmen in India. India wants to improve the state of sports infrastructure in India. India wants that more and more youth join sports. Okay. Now, for that, we need to dramatically change the landscape of sports in India. We need to change our sports ecosystem because it suffers from various problems. Okay, we'll talk about those problems. But to solve those problems, recently the government of India has launched National Sports Policy 2025, replacing the earlier sports policy called National Sports Policy 2001. Okay, so the previous policy was of 2001. It is being replaced by this new policy. Now, what are the features of this new policy? How is it different from the previous policy? And how will it solve the problems faced by the sports ecosystem in India? Let's talk about this, okay? So, National Sports Policy recently launched. Clear? Now, first let's talk about the 5 key pillars, because this sports policy was launched And the government said that there are 5 key pillars that this sports policy would work on. First of all, first pillar is excellence in sports. For that, government would invest significantly in sports infrastructure like better grounds, better facilities, and government would focus more on governance of various sports federations. Many sports federations are accused of corruption, some unethical malpractices. Some sports federations, like the Wrestling Federation, was also accused of sexual misconduct. All these things were there. So government wants to improve governance in sports federations and improve infrastructure so that excellence is there in sports. Our medals tally improves. Then, sports for economic development is another pillar which government will work on. Okay, government wants to use sports to boost tourism in a particular area. If it becomes famous that footballers from this area are very bright, this area is famous for generating footballers or hockey players, then it would boost tourism. Then government wants to use sports to boost economic activities like manufacturing of sports equipment and other related industries. So we want to use sports for economic development, boosting India's GDP. That is third. Then that is second. Then third is sports for social development. We want to enhance access of sports facilities for women, tribals, okay, people with disabilities, divyangs. So we want to use sports for social development. Plus, we also want to make these local games played by tribals and local people mainstream, like we did with Kabaddi. Okay, we made Kabaddi a mainstream game. So we want to do that with other sports as well. Then sports as a people's movement, generate awareness among people. Okay, because many parents in India, they discourage their children from joining any sports because they want them to focus on academics, because they think that their job prospects would improve because of academic performance, not because of sports performance. So we need to generate more awareness. We need to make people follow sports or put their kids into sports. So we want to generate a sports movement, okay? And then we want to integrate sports with National Education Policy 2020 so that we generate enough sportsmen in school system as well. Clear? So these are the 5 pillars. Now, National Sports Policy wants to create a proper framework for each of these pillars. Okay. Now, what is that framework? First of all, to improve governance in these sports federations, government will bring out laws and rules so as to create a regulatory framework under which governance improves, transparency improves in these sports federations. Okay. Then government wants to basically encourage private sector participation in giving grants for building sports infrastructure, all these things, financing a team. Then government wants to bring in technology, AI, data analytics in measuring sports performance and other indicators. So use of technology. Then different states would be monitored and ranked using various key performance indicators, KPIs. So KPIs would be developed and different districts or the sports performance in these different districts and states would be measured. Clear? And government would create a model policy so that different states and UTs would also follow them. Clear? So this is the framework that National Sports Policy 2025 wants to build. Clear? But remember these 5 key pillars. Clear? And these 5 key pillars would solve, if properly implemented, they would solve the biggest problems that sports ecosystem in India face. Okay, the biggest problems. Now, what are those big problems that sports ecosystem in India faces? Okay, problems, issues with sports ecosystem. First of all, governance, like I said, ethical misconduct in sports federations, lack of transparency, corruption, so governance failure. Okay, then the entire sports market in India is cricket-centric. Okay, so all the sponsors, funders, advertisers, they focus more on cricket. Okay, more than 80% of all this revenue goes to cricket. Less than 20% is left for other sports. So this is a big problem that discourages other sportsmen. Then lack of structured talent scouting, talent hunting. Okay, because we do not search for talent in different sports properly. Many talented tribals, villagers, well, they don't come up. And that is where India suffers, our medals suffer. Then there is gender disparity. Because of sexual misconduct, ethical conduct, and many other problems, females leave sports early. Clear? And then overemphasis on academics. Well, that is a problem with parents and teachers and our society in general. So we need to balance academics and sports. So these are the problems which the National Sports Policy aims to solve. Simple. And now let's move on to last news item of the day, and that is the NISAR project. Okay. So, well, NISAR project was announced many years back. The full form of NISAR is NASA ISRO Synthetic Aperture Radar. Okay, NISAR. So both NASA and ISRO, so it's a joint space project, would build a satellite. That satellite would be used for Earth observation. Okay, so we want to measure the effects of climate change, we want to measure the soil moisture level, we want to measure fluid dynamics, okay, we want to measure ocean dynamics, all these things we want to do, okay, through satellite observation. So that is why NASA and ISRO have come together, okay. But this project, the deadline for this project was being extended every year. Recently, ISRO has announced that this satellite will be launched by July 30 or 31st, July 30 basically, okay. So this satellite will finally be launched from Sriharikota in India, okay, India's spaceport. Sriharikota, that's where we launch most of our satellites. So Sriharikota in Andhra Pradesh, okay, and the rocket that will be used to launch this NISAR satellite will be GSLV F-16, okay. So it will be, the project is joint, okay, NASA is doing it, ISRO is doing it. But the launch would take place from India and ISRO's rocket GSLV F-16. Clear? Now this satellite will be placed in sun synchronous orbit. Now there are different orbits which we will discuss in science and technology lectures. Okay, low Earth orbit, high Earth orbit, geosynchronous, geostationary, sun synchronous orbits. Okay, so it will be placed in a sun synchronous orbit around 700 kilometers above the Earth's surface, okay, and its job would be to observe the Earth. Clear? Earth observation satellite. Now the reason why it is called NISAR or NASA ISRO, because NASA is going to give one radar for it and ISRO is going to give one radar for it. So this satellite will have two radars. Because this satellite will have two radars, it will have all weather capability. It can make observations during day, night, irrespective of the weather and climate in a particular area. Okay, so its observations would be enhanced. Clear? Further details about this project would come on July 30 when this will be launched and all newspapers would cover it. So we'll talk about this project again on July 30 when it will be launched. Okay, for now, whatever information is given in your notes, just absorb that, just read that. Clear? And that would be all. On that note, I'll be signing off with the promise of seeing you again with another set of news items. Thank you, everyone.